Atakan here. I wanted to make a tutorial video and see how it would turn out, and I randomly decided to make one on my snapping tool. Snapping is used for perfect precision for location of objects. There are a couple of snap options: snap to grid, curve, point, projected center, and view planes. However, I want to talk about snap to grid and point options, because these are the ones I have used most so far. Before using Grid Snap tool, you might want to check the size of the grid for your preference. In default, Maya uses centimeters. Now, we can start with a cube. I create a cube and then change my perspective to top view for making things easier to see. Now, when I move my cube, I can see that it moves around freely. However, for precision, I might want to make it move alongside the grid lines rather than moving freely. So for this, I use Snap to Grid tool. After I activate Snap to Grid tool, I can see that it starts to snap itself alongside grid lines. You can also notice that Snap to Grid tool actually attaches the cube alongside the intersections of the grid lines. This is because of how snapping tools work. They work with respect to the pivot point of the object. The pivot point of the cube is at center, so it actually moves with respect to its center. However, what if we want to put the cube inside those grid squares rather than to the intersections of the grid lines? For that, we would have to move the pivot point of the cube to one of the corners of the cube so that we could attach that. For that, we need to change our move mode to move pivot point mode by pressing the button D, and also deactivate our snap to grid mode. Now we can see that we can move our pivot point of the cube freely. However, what we want to do is to attach it into these corners. For this, we use our Snap to Point tool. After activating Snap to Point tool, I can see that I can move my pivot point to the vertices of the cube. Any of them would suffice. After getting it to the corner, I deactivate my Move to Pivot Point mode back to Move mode. And also I change my Snap mode back to Snap to Grid. Now, when I move my cube, I can see that it fits perfectly into the grid squares. Let's change our view to perspective. If we zoom in, we can see that we can also use this for Y lines. Now it's perfect.